Hi, and welcome to the World Networking Podcast. Today we have John Sturley joining us with his background in ministry, traveling, and education. He's well rounded with leadership, and he's here today to show you what's inspired him to go through and live his life. I'm sorry for the delay. We've had a bit of technical issues that we were working through, and we're back up to speed now. We have an extra recording session next week scheduled, so expect an early podcast next week for the delay. We really do enjoy having community here to listen, and I really do hope you guys are enjoying what we're bringing. So, with no further ado, here's John, and welcome to the show today. Thank you. Hi, and welcome to the World Networking Podcast. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Cameron. As Cameron said, my name is John Sturley. I was born in 1950, so I'll be 73 in the next few weeks.
Congratulations.
And thank you. I live in a little town north of Lake Tahoe, California, by 2 hours called Quincy, and did not grow up here. Up until I was about almost 40, I lived in Los Angeles, Pasadena, Alta Loma areas. And then we moved up here and I became principal of a Christian school for 27 years. And I've been in and out of Christian. Yeah. And Cameron, you were a student at the school there for a while.
I was.
And my goodness, if I may say, quite the singer. Very, very good guy. And
I appreciate that.
oh yeah, had you in some plays and different things. I've known you sang the national anthem for ball games here in town at the college and things like that. That's pretty neat.
Well, thank you. That's very unexpected, but that's very kind of you to say.
Oh, absolutely. Well, in my life, I've been, as far as world traveling experiences, I've been to Brazil, to Israel, Switzerland, France, Finland, very briefly, China, in a place called, China. Oh, Ukraine. Thank you. My youngest daughter just reminded me. Been to
Ukraine is cool.
Ukraine. Yeah, down in Kiev as well as Odessa, right as they took over the Crimean Peninsula, the Russians.
Oh,
And
wow.
helped my son move out of there, which is a whole other story.
I was going to say that your son was over there doing mission work. I remember that.
Yes, he was working with not handicap, but orphan boys and girls.
Yes.
And what literally were throwaway children in that culture, looked down upon very much. And in China, I was part of our Christian school and a goodwill experience. We had 10 students from our Christian school and about 4 adults went to Lingsong, China, which is way in the west, first to Beijing, then to Lingsong, way in the west, just a little bit a ways from the Myanmar border. And there we stayed at what was called a #1 middle school in Lingsong, that is like their high school and a boarding school. It was quite an experience. And many in the school, teachers, administration, were Communist Party members. And they knew that we were from a Christian school and invited us. We wanted to have an international experience, so we approached a mission agency that dealt with that, and they provided opportunity for us to go there and had a wonderful time. Our goal in going there was to simply promote goodwill that might open some doors for teachers on staff at Lingsong to further do what they could to spread the gospel. Because, of course, this was 2010. Now it's much more severe clamping down and bulldozing churches and so forth. But
yeah, I was going to say that was in a different China.
Yes, it was. And it was a China, still communist, but not quite so persecuting by any means. You still couldn't overtly, talk about the Lord or give invitations or any of that, or you'd get really clamped down on. But we had a great time, and even some of the female students with some of our female adults came to Christ during that time. Boy, you didn't have to tell them what it meant to become a Christian. They knew right off the bat. And yet some did come to Christ through Anna Shea, if you remember her.
Oh yeah.
And was really neat. And to show you how God works, she went on that trip. A year or two later, she went to university in Scotland. And who did she room with? Chinese students. And that really added a wonderful thing in terms of how God works.
Wow.
So
Wow, yeah.
anyway,
That helped prepare her down the path.
yes.
That's
And
really neat.
yeah, it really was. It was pretty cool. And
Yeah.
anyway, that's some of the experience, a few other places just for a touchdown by an airplane in the Caribbean or Finland. I think I mentioned Finland.
Yes.
Uh, I'm trying to think of anything else.
You've
Anyway,
been quite a
Paris.
few places though. That's that's
It's
a
it's
list.
and we able to see the Matterhorn. That was on my bucket list growing up,
Nice.
and also spend a tour, walking where Jesus walked, kind of thing in Israel. Uh, and that was quite an experience
Now
as well.
here's a tough question.
Okay,
What's your favorite place?
that would be a tough question. At my age, I think I like it here at home.
I knew you were gonna say home. I like your home too.
Well,
You
thank
would
you,
you would be very well centered to say that because it is not a bad place to be to relax.
thank you. I agree with that. I in the back of our home we have a little patio, and I like to get up early in the morning and go out with a cup of coffee, take a Bible, and just read and listen to the birds. And we're talking like, oh, I don't know, 5:45, 6 o'clock, and that sort of thing. And that's been just a great thing.
Tranquil, absolutely tranquil environment to be in. I
Yes.
love it. I think that's a healthy thing that people should do is at least get up in the morning. People don't respect the level of energy spike you get from getting yourself out of bed and making yourself healthy. I mean, really forming a healthy habit of petitioning your day. I
That's
think
very
is
true.
it's
Yes.
important. It's really
Yes,
important.
I do. Help set your thinking. The
Yes.
oftentimes like in our mind, what pictures, what am I playing in my mind in the morning, in the cave of
Yes.
my thinking? Ha, I
You have
want
to
good
search.
you do, and I want good stuff in there, and the Bible definitely helps and sets
I
that on course.
I don't see any fault in that. I
Mhm.
personally and I was gonna tell you this is and it's there's no easy way to say this. So I'm gonna just say this now. I am no longer Christian.
Oh, I didn't know,
I
Cameron.
I haven't told you.
Yeah.
I was really debating it because I have a lot of love for you and I
Oh,
respect
thank
you a
you.
lot.
Thank
And
you.
to be frank, you taught me a lot about Christianity, and
Mm,
everyone did locally. And I think that there are wonderful aspects to it.
mm.
Absolutely wonderful aspects that grow you as a person. For me, I'm on a spiritual journey of discovery and trying to just take an unbiased approach and step back for a while. And that's where I'm at. But I
Okay.
wanted to be honest with you about that because I don't want you to feel like I'm coming at you sideways with any questions or anything here because it really is all love and respect from my end. And I really do respect Christianity as its own way of life. I mean, it's
Hmm.
it's lasted the ages for a reason. There's not all negatives from religion. There's a lot that can be learned and that can be addressed from discussion about religion, discussion about neighbors, how to help your neighbors. And that's the aspect that I feel like helped me grow into the person I am today.
Mm.
And for that, I can't appreciate enough my foundation in religion. That being said, I personally just have so many questions over the years. I I had to be honest with myself,
Hmm.
and that's where I'm at. I can't say that I wouldn't go back. Um, I don't know what the future holds. I know that I'm being honest with myself though, and in saying that, and it takes a very deep part of me to say that to you. I
Well,
hope you know that.
oh, thank you, Cameron. I thank you for sharing that, and I love and respect you. And doesn't
And
diminish any of
likewise.
that. Oh, thank you. Doesn't diminish any of that at all. And I'll add you to my prayer list that as you make your journey, that Lord willing, you might come full circle to the Savior. But
Uh, and
hey,
I hope you do. I really intend this to be a discussion where we can where
well,
maybe I can learn and gather what brought you, what really brings your passion,
mhm,
for helping people to discover this, because I know you care. You wouldn't
mm,
have been in the school for as long as you were if you didn't care about
mhm,
trying to instill and teach. Uh, and again, like, there's so many good principles that come out of it. I think it's something everyone should read at a point in their life. I think
mm,
at a point everyone should at least read the Bible, because there's
yes,
so many aspects in society that pertain to religion, and it's almost a civil duty to understand the Bible when you're a U.S. citizen, because it's
mm,
it's so intertwined. I mean, our forefathers were Christian. It's
yes,
it's just the truth. It's something we don't respect enough about each other in our cultures. I feel like we need to come together more from an outside perspective and understand, like, why things are how they are. It's not because people are outright upset at other groups and they want to ostracize other people for their beliefs. I don't believe that all the time. I think it's genuinely people just trying to discover who they are.
yes. I agree. Very much so.
Life's hard. I mean,
No, it is.
I've gone through losing four people that I was close to in the last six
Mm,
months, and
oh,
it's thrown me for a loop. I I feel fine now, so to speak, but there'll be moments where I just get deep in thought, and it's like, wow, like, that person's gone. I am what's left. Like, I am part of the family. I am part of the generation to continue, and that to me is an honor. I want to take it as an honor, because it's important. If we don't have people to grow and to learn with, and people to nurture, then society won't hold together. We need each other, and our neighbors, and the love that we show for our neighbors does come back.
yes. I think you're right on, spot on. Very much so.
Thank you.
Mm,
That means a lot, actually. I wanted to ask you,
yes.
what brought you into the educational system? Since we actually were going down that road anyways, that's perfect. That was the next question.
Okay. Very good. Well, let me say, growing up, it never entered my mind to ever become a teacher or get in the educational system. In fact, as we've had our just this discussion, you know, um, I'll tell you, there's a spiritual journey, and I'll just be who I am, and I'm not trying to beat anybody over the head, your listeners, whatever.
Oh
But
no, please,
yeah,
please, from
okay,
the bottom of your heart, just say what's on your mind, because I want all perspectives to be here. I really want
okay.
everyone to feel welcome, and you are more than welcome to talk about Christianity as in depth as you'd like.
Oh, well,
Or,
thank you.
or your faith, your journey of faith. I
Okay.
respect that. I really highly respect that.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, cool.
Of
Well,
course.
I came to Christ at a very young age as my Savior, and in my case, I felt a wonderful presence coming in my heart. It made me think how I wanted to. Eventually, I began to think, even at like 11 or 12, what I would like to do with my life, and I could think of nothing better than to put it back in God's hands. So, in my child's mind at that time, I interpreted that as being either a pastor or a missionary of a Christian church. And then I oriented, went, of course, high school, went to a couple different colleges, Bible schools, and got out of those with this was back in 1972, with a Bachelor of Arts in Christian in the Bible and a minor at that time in ancient history. Then I tried to go to seminary and learn, but work and school, seminary and all, it just wasn't fitting together. And I finally prayed a prayer and said, God, I was about 22, I think. Lord, I don't care what it is you want me to do, just so long as I know it was of you. And then I just didn't want to float into something. So the next day or the day after, in a very short time, a friend of mine called me that I had known in one of the colleges and said, John, they need a Christian school teacher at Village Christian School in Sun Valley, a large Christian school, about 1,200 kids uh, down in Sun Valley, California, Southern California. And when he called and told me about that, I said, you know what? This is what God, where he wants me to go. So I threw my hat in that ring and got hired halfway through the school year as a teacher was leaving at the 6th grade level. And I was there 2.5 years and found out I absolutely loved it in dealing with the kids. My first half a year, I literally had liars, cheats, and thieves in my class of 32 kids. Not everybody, but and I learned quickly that sometimes in these Christian schools, parents aren't invested in Christianity, but they believe the school to be a place of less evil to happen to their kid. Even back
Yeah.
then, in the 70s. That was also an attitude in a similar way we found at the Chinese Communist School in Lingsong. They
Really?
had, yeah, because they had students from non-Christian groups come over there from America, and they began to form the opinion that it's the students from the Christian schools that behave better. And that's one reason why they opened it up to us. They greeted us with a big banner in a big meeting room saying, "Welcome, Plumas Christian School, students," and so forth. Anyway,
That's
that's
awesome,
a
though.
it really was, and we learned a lot of Chinese culture. That was wonderful. And
That was
anyway,
one trip that I was very envious of going on because
ah,
I knew I was too young at the time, but
uh-huh,
at that time, China wasn't going through so much stuff, and there's so much cultural history in China that it would be just so cool to see.
yes,
But
boy,
as an American traveling there right now it's hard to say the least.
for sure, and but my next 2 years at this Christian school, oh, I love the kids, and I think they very much responded. It was just a wonderful experience. And if it wasn't for a little church that opened up right at the end of that 2.5 years in South Pasadena, a Grace Brethren church, and that opened up, and my heart was oriented towards uh, the church too. That I ended up becoming a pastor of that church. Now, in my life, I've been in and out of pastoring, Christian school ministry, and some of the things that go along with all that for almost like 55 years now. And I've been a pastor of 3 different churches.
Wow.
In fact, I'm currently a pastor of a church right now. And all 3 churches, just as a side note, were places that had internal problems congregations blew up, as it were. People would leave, and then I would get asked to come along and help, and just be the pastor, because all that other stuff happened, thankfully, before we ever got to any of these places. Two in churches, Southern California, one here in Quincy, and by God's grace, two of the three turned around, and one we reached a decision that we need to really close the door on it, and that's a whole other thing. But anyway, that's how I got an education, and then the Lord opened the door for me to come from LA up to Quincy to be principal of Plymouth Christian School. Was there 27 years, and K through 12 school eventually, and we had about 127 or 9 students at our biggest venture. We had very rarely we ever expelled anybody, but we did a couple that year. Anyway, and so since about 2010, I was doing the pastoring here at Springs of Hope Church, and then being the principal up till 2015. 2015, I retired from the school, and then I'm just doing the church. And my wife and I are loving it very much.
I really think that it's great that you guys are bonding over that and able to actually be comfortable and not have so much on your plate, because taking care of a school and teaching it's a great thing to do, but it definitely is stressful.
Yes, that is so true. Neither job, pastoring or education, is 9 to 5, leave it at work kind of a job.
Very true.
Because, a lot of things happen. You're dealing with people, obviously, constantly. That in itself wears you out. At least it did me. And it has its issues. Not that I'm complaining by any means, but they had their issues, and we had wonderful times in both places.
And everything has a process, right? Like,
Yes.
you have to work through and find out what group you're dealing with, what needs the group needs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, sometimes people just need people to talk to. Like,
Yes.
that's the biggest reason I've started this podcast,
Mm.
is for people who don't really understand society. They feel a little lost. I mean, I
Yes.
feel a little lost right now. It's hard
Mm.
to understand the direction of our country.
Oh
Um,
boy. Yes.
it's important right now more than ever to come together and understand the strengths of each other and
Mm-hmm.
what we can do if we trust that pulling together can bring progress. And
Yes.
that's really it. Like, it's not easy to want to work with other people that don't think the same way you do.
Yes,
It's
that's true.
uncomfortable. It's
Mm-hmm.
very uncomfortable. I felt that way in college,
Mm.
and in business. I the amount of networking I've done with business owners and stuff, it can, as a younger man, it's hard because you don't have the experience they do,
Mm-hmm.
but you want to put the foot in the door.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it's like you become lost. You don't know
Yes.
when the time to put the foot in the door is. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think having conversations with people like you and being able to distribute that sends a message that people are concerned about this in society. People are considerate about others. And it's not always this negative loop that media likes to portray, that people are always trying to discriminate or, you know, banter at someone because their color, or it's
Yeah.
not like that in every community. It's really
Mm,
not. And
mm,
the America that the outside world sees, I think, is very different. It's just like how we see other countries from America. Like, we don't.
yes.
It's
Mm,
it's important to communicate, and that's the root of all of this. This is my little part that I'm sending out in my life to help others maybe want to do the same and spread roots and make relationships.
mm-hmm. I think it's a
So
wonderful idea. I really do.
I think so too, and I really do think that what you're saying here is important. People need to understand that you're not always going to feel comfortable when you're doing something for passion.
Yes, that's the truth. In fact, I think that's a often phrase it this way, if you know you're in the place where God wants you to be when you find yourself unable to do it. And it forces you to
Yeah.
rely upon the Lord, and speaking from the Christian perspective, forces you to rely upon Christ. And I think that's exactly where God wants us. We're
Well,
in
having a rock,
situations.
you
Yes,
have to have a rock.
you're 100% right, you know, and
And
that
that's oh, I'm sorry.
oh,
I
no, no,
don't
go
mean
ahead.
to keep cutting you off.
Oh,
I
no,
I
no.
just find it super fascinating because it's that whole analogy of the rock is
Mm,
what we need in society.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And an unchangeable rock that
Yes.
is strong and there. And the Lord, helps me and think I pray most every day, not entirely, but especially on Sunday morning, going off to the church. Lord, help me to think right today and help me in all my relationships. Because I think those things are very, very important, of course.
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
and I think any walk of faith, whether it be Christian, whether it be agnostic, whether it be, Islamic, there's a lot of forms where you're still trying to reach out. You're still
Mhm.
trying to connect yourself because you understand that what you have, this consciousness, is more than just something. It's important. It's special. And
Yes.
that's why I'll happily tell you I'm spiritual. I have no doubt that there's some element of power, some element of energy that I will never understand from
Mhm.
being a human.
Mhm.
But but it's looking at nature, it's looking at plants and where we get our food. Like everything is connected in a form.
Mhm.
Everything that we know in life.
Mhm.
And it's beautiful. It's truly a beautiful thing, and it's a blessing, and we need to take care of this planet.
Yes. Yes, very much so. Very good.
Oh, I think that was a wonderful branch to get into this next question, because the educational system is one part, but when it comes to your experience, you've had a lot of experience in ministry. So, what's the most unique experience you've had when it comes to the Christian ministry?
Boy, that too is a hard one to answer, but I
Oh,
reflected
I'm
on that.
sure.
And uh, there have been what I would simply say in my own life, some those supernatural times when I have really felt God speaking through me in a very unique and unusual way. Um, there's been answers to prayer financially on situations that have been pretty major. There have been answers to prayer in praying for the health of people that were struggling with cancer or even feeling demonically oppressed, those kinds of things. And and then part of ministry is not quote unquote glamorous at all. The Paul in the New Testament uses the illustration of an ox that is treading out the corn, and in the ancient world, that ox hitched up and going around in a circle over a corn and so forth, treading it, breaking it down, whatever. Uh, that grinding it, I should say, grinding it in a stone bowl or whatever. That's a very true. As you prepare sermons or things like that, a lot of times you're just grinding away and going at it. But I think as far as those other types of things, and I'd almost put it this way too, in a way, the older I have gotten, the learning to live with God, I trust and I hope, Not mean I'm perfect by any means, or I haven't stumbled along the way. Learning what it means to live with God as a part of your thinking, a part of your heart, a part of your reliance, a part of your trust. Uh, and God, it's been well said, and God wants you to love him for himself. And so sometimes you have this incredible experience, and then you begin chasing after the experience. And God doesn't want you, you want to reduplicate the feeling or whatever. And God, I think in my life at times said, no, 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 that's not where it's at. It's me is where it's at. Not that momentary thing that I blessed you with or whatever. And I
Yes.
think that's been a real vital, important aspect to it.
Well,
God wants,
and
yeah, God wants to be one for himself. Go ahead.
yes, and I apologize for the interruptions.
Oh, no
I,
apology. Huh.
but I what I find interesting about that is it because in the Bible we're made in God's image.
Yes.
Man is made in God's image, and I really identify with that. I
Mm.
I think at the root of and this is my personal thought process on all this. So I've
Hmm.
broke this down for years, and I really have tried to take steps back and be honest about this. I think, and not every religion's equal. Not every belief is the same, right? But
Correct.
an aspect of life, I think, that we all gather is we all kind of want to understand. We have a longing to understand things, and
Yes.
that aspect is that to me is spirituality.
Mm.
Trying to understand the striving, the action put in to actually push to understand what your purpose is
Hmm.
and what drives your motivation in life,
Mm.
what
Mm.
drives your passion, your love. um, you take that and you share that,
Hmm.
and some people know how to share that better than others.
Mm.
Like, I would say you are gifted in the fact that you're able to speak to people um, very well. I mean,
Well,
I don't
thank
know
you.
how else to say that, but you're
Mm.
very fluid in speech and very loving, very patient, and not
Well,
everyone is that way.
well, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
I have learned a lot over the years from you, and I I'm inspired by what you've done. I hope that I can have an outreach for my community as much as you've done.
well, thank you very much, Cameron. I greatly appreciate that.
I'm just so stoked to have you on. I'm having trouble keeping track because it's exciting. I love our conversations genuinely, and again, I've been meaning to tell you that about
Oh.
the Christianity, and
Hmm.
I it the reason it's so tough is you've seen me grow up, and
Hmm.
I the last thing I want people thinking is that I didn't consider what I was doing,
Right.
because I considered it for a long, long, long time.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it gets to a point where I have to accept that I'm my own person. I'm not the religion. I'm not an organization. I'm one person. And I
Hmm.
have to understand that if I'm keeping myself oriented and centered, and I'm focusing myself in a direction that's bringing growth in my life, and
Hmm.
it's not causing a negative effect on people around me, but it's
Hmm.
bringing positives, I think that I'm personally going in a good direction for myself.
Hmm. Hmm.
It doesn't dismiss the value of having those communities,
Hmm. Yes.
and that's kind of where I'm at. Is I feel like I want to be part of the foot soldiers, that the people that push society in a direction that's asking questions. And if I'm conflicted, I know others have to be conflicted out there.
Yes.
So the best I can do is offer my love, right? From what I was
Yes.
saying, my love and
Yes.
my respect. And it's something I'm working on. like you said,
Mm.
I'm no better at the being perfect thing. I have made plenty of mistakes, and I've said plenty of things I wish I could take back.
Mm.
But it's it comes down to if you learn, and
Yes.
if you want to consider change.
And, the Bible has a lot to say on what you're uh, discussing.
I would love to hear it,
Oh,
honestly.
okay. Okay. Uh, and let me say, I don't want to redirect from our questions and so forth,
No, of
but
course.
yeah, earlier on, and I'll try to make this brief and then we don't have to go this vein, but earlier on, you talked about our world a bit, like what's happening in it. And whereas I think it's only natural for us as people made in God's image that we want to build for the future.
Yes.
And there'd be something wrong with us if we didn't. And in one way, that's why we have families. As a dad with 4 kids that are grown up and 9 grandkids now, uh,
That's
I
awesome.
it's been wonderful. Let me tell you, I uh, I have a certain satisfaction just in that next generation that it's outliving me and it's going on, you know.
Yes.
And
It's beautiful.
it is. It's a wonderful thing, the way that God's designed things. But at the same time, too, the Bible does have a lot of prophetic information that describes the planet is not going on forever without God's direct intervention. And it very much looks as if, and I know people have been saying this for centuries, but every time our hindsight gets better, it looks as if enough significant things are happening that it's fulfilling what the Bible says is going to happen right prior to the second coming of Christ. And I know, and my point in bringing that up was just the idea that the future isn't unlimited.
Yeah.
There are well, I don't know what you want to say, big movements, trends, various other things. In fact, this Sunday night at our church, we're going to talk about some of those things in a prophetic way about matching, Lord willing, what the Bible says about life as we live it now, and what it prophesies. Things like the digital dollar. Is that going to become the new currency for at least the West? We're not sure how China, Russia will fit into all this,
Yeah.
but but that lends itself to Revelation 13 about a great deal of control exercised by a world government upon people about their spending habits. And we're even seeing some things about that even now, about these, I kind of forget what the initials stand for, but social credit systems. Play ball with us, our viewpoints, or we'll shut down your bank account. Chase
Mhm.
Manhattan's been doing that in some select cases with people that have been, that have been on the wrong side of where they think they should be, whether that's abortion or whether that's something else.
Yeah.
Uh, and yet some other things are happening by people that are helping to correct that, and I'm glad to see that. But anyway, I don't want to launch onto a whole nother discussion, but I just
No,
wanted to
no.
reflect a little bit about the future.
I think
And
that's a good thing in it. And
oh, very good. Because God has a plan for this planet too, and He's never abandoned that. But the Bible says He's very long suffering and patient, not willing anybody should ever perish, but all come to the knowledge of repentance. And I know you've had this background for sure, but I just wanted to say for our listeners, the whole
absolutely.
the whole Christianity thing. If you take away the trappings of church and whatever, I think you can boil it down to simply this: your whole standing before a holy God is found through your trusting Christ as your Savior. And that's it. You're standing before a holy God that the Bible affirms is there, logic tells us is there. Probability studies have been done on this ad infinitum about our world coming together through an intelligent designer, not quite the same as the intelligent design movement, but an actual personal intelligent designer that gave us in his image personality, and that we reflect in that he has personality. And anyway, I kind of forgot where I was going with that, but that's okay.
No. It's
We have,
okay. It's something I was gonna add is
yeah,
because we were talking about like the state of the world, and that was kind of where we were getting where you were taking it was
yes.
like with how society is and
Hmm.
people, the younger generations, and what I was gonna add is from my experience with the Bible, you I can't quote where, I forgot, but I know that there's references to, well, I mean, there's plenty of references in the Bible. What am I thinking? Where God works through people.
Yes.
And that's what I'm trying to get at is I feel like, at least speaking from my life,
Hmm.
I I find that beautiful because
Mm.
I don't think that's a bad interpretation of life. I
No.
think that I I mean, it's gonna sound ignorant, but I don't know how else to word this. I feel like I am part of God's plan, so to
Uh-huh.
speak. In that
Yes.
aspect, I'm actively trying to make society better in
Mm.
the little way I can.
Yes. Very good. Very
And
good.
to me, that's where, like, I feel like we really relate. I don't have any grievances with that. And for you to share all that, I think it's great for the viewers. Um, if a viewer came to Christ through this, I would be ecstatic. I don't have
Mm.
any quarrels with that. It's it is simply a personal journey, and I have only personal judgment for myself. I don't
Mm.
intend to judge people for what they believe. I
Right.
intend to show them what I believe and explain it so they understand that A, I'm not crazy,
Yeah.
and B, I do care and I do
Yes.
want to listen.
Yes. Oh, I think that's wonderful, Cameron, and I want to say the true Christian church, God forbid anybody in it judges anybody else, because it's for a place, it's a place, it needs people. It used to be in the 50s growing up. In church, went to church as a kid, and church is for good people. And then you know what? It's not. It's for people who know they need help in living life.
Yes. Yeah,
You know?
sometimes that's part of the not knowing, the being lost is sometimes you just have to cry out for help. You
Yes,
don't have a
it's true.
choice.
It's true.
You're so morally broken, you need a hand. You need the
Mm,
arm out to support you.
yes, very, very true. Very true.
And I say that with no disrespect because
Mm,
I don't want to come across as religion being a crutch. And I know that
hmm.
that could be an analogy for that, but that's not what I intend. Again, everyone's journey is different.
Well, I know, Cameron, you sound like a very refreshing thinker to me.
Thank you.
So that's yeah, very much.
I try to be honest, and
Hmm.
it's uncomfortable being honest, and I'm sure you understand that as a pastor. I'm
Yes.
sure it's hard to talk about certain things, especially in the Bible.
Yeah.
There's some graphic stuff in the Bible. I I mean,
Yes.
that's just history. I mean, like Pharaoh and the slaves. That was something that happened. A
Yes.
whole people got enslaved. I could not imagine that. I could
Yeah.
not imagine.
Yeah. I agree. Oh my. And,
I mean, the fact that we have gotten this far as a people, in the world, it's it's surprising.
it
You know,
is.
it, there's so many times people have been greedy and corrupt and have tried, but
Hmm.
there's always that force of good, right? There's always that
Hmm.
balance, and
Hmm.
and thank heavens there's a balance of emotions and not just
Mm-hmm.
anger. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, everyone could be angry right now. There's plenty to be angry about, but there's
Yes.
plenty more to be thankful for.
Yes. I think you're right on.
That's something I've been working on recently is trying to change my perspective to be positive.
Mm. Yes. I think that's a great, what do you want to say? Great mindset, a great attitude. And I think it'll get whatever we're doing. And reflecting on my own life, like even in a struggling church or a small Christian school, that is so crucial because another way of saying it, as pointed out to me a long time ago, being positive is another way of saying you have faith. And
Yes.
and I'll put it in my context: faith in God, faith that He promises to work all things together for good to those who love Him in Romans 8:28. Faith that there is a God and that, as Jesus said, He is good. And the word He used there, that God is intrinsically good and the only one there is, and that's according to Christ, and
Yeah.
that in the sense of that divine perfection. And that is very, very true, I think, and boy, that He has a positive attitude toward us and toward this planet. Yet at the same time, of course, it is hard to explain what happens. We can't
Yes.
understand, or at least it's hard to understand everything in the Bible. You can understand a lot of it, but some of the stuff is like, wow,
Yeah.
and it,
No person is ever going to understand 100% of what's in the Bible.
no,
There's
I
too
agree.
much. There's too much.
Yes,
And it's been interpreted so many times that it's not
yeah,
even one version. There's multiple tongues.
yes, yes, very true.
One thing I wanted to add before we move on, because
Yeah.
I don't want to get us too derailed, but I was just thinking back and well, when you were saying that the positivity equals like equates to faith,
Hmm.
the that's kind of where I was going earlier. I was trying to explain that as it that's how it feels to me. Is
Mm.
I don't I don't have fear to die. I don't like I obviously there's an innate human reaction like, oh, you don't want to die. But
Yeah.
I'm content, like I'm really content with the direction I'm going to, like if something were to happen, it's still like I was going that way. I was headed that way. I
Hmm.
have nothing to be ashamed about
Hmm.
for pushing in a positive direction. And if it leads me down a path that, I um unfortunately pass, or an accident happens, a freak accident, like anything could happen, right? Anything
Hmm.
could happen with anyone. So having
Mm.
a balance of your emotions, um when it comes to how you react to society and how you value life is something that brings me peace,
Mm.
because I'm able to talk with others. I'm able to discuss and bounce ideas with them, and that to me is a tool that was given through natural cause. I mean, it's like, and I'm not saying through evolution. I'm saying like
Oh,
this is something we naturally are inclined to want to do, is discuss. And that was what I was kind of getting at earlier, is we're trying to learn everything, right?
yes.
We're trying to gather ourselves and collect ourselves into something that we can build off of, make that rock. So
Yes.
that's my rock,
Mm.
um, is having comfort in knowing that my story is going to build someone else's story,
Mm.
and I'm a building block. It's like I've learned so much about history. They were my building blocks. All those people I learned about in history, I built my foundation off of that, and I value that. I think it's really cool that people in the past took that time to record and to actually process history so we can have this today. And that's what I want to do. I want to build history. I want
Yes,
to be able to learn with others, not just through myself and my own imperfection.
very good. Very good.
I know that was a lot, but
No,
it's a hard thing to explain. These things are not easy to explain.
no, they're not.
But on that note,
Mhm.
let's ask you one question I have on
Well,
ministry, and then we'll move past ministry because I feel like we we had quite a good banter.
okay, very good.
um, and not to say we can't talk about it, but
Right.
um, this is the last direct question. As a
Okay.
pastor, how hard is it to balance your perspective with the perspective of other people? And
You
by
know,
that, I
yeah, go ahead.
really just for clarification, by that I mean, have you had moments in the past where someone tried to argue over religious beliefs?
Yes. And I think there's a couple things to keep in mind, like the self watch, if you will. Looking at myself in those situations and wanting to achieve a genuine authenticness rather than coming with my stuff, if you know what I mean. Sometimes in religious discussions, we're motivated to get out what we think is the truth. I've got to unload this on this guy or gal, and I need to do it. And maybe I'm tromping all over them in the process. That's bad. That's wrong. I'm not trying to build relationship, which is very important. I'm just trying to unload my stuff, and I don't want to be there in those kinds of discussions. I want to stay graciously, speak the truth, the Bible says, New Testament, in love, and be respectful of other people created in God's image, and that kind of a thing, and try to respond in a way that leaves doors open, and then learning to trust God more about I might just be a seed sower. I'm not here for the harvest, and I may just be doing that for a while in this person's life. Maybe in another person's life, I might be more of the individual who maybe have a chance to ask them if they'd like to come to Christ or something like that, other than dropping seed. So I would say uh, being gracious, honest, humble, respectful, standing up for the truth in love as God gives it, and being true to God, but you're not trying to beat people over the head. I one little example from years ago comes to mind. A couple actually. One, I was doing what's the hard thing. Anybody, no matter what you're trying to push, it's a hard thing to do, and that is going out in a community, door to door, whatever. I was walking down the street, and there was a young couple on a front lawn, and this is in South Pasadena. And I stopped by and I chatted with him, and I asked him, "Have you ever thought about what Jesus has said?" And it was a guy and a gal, and the guy said to me, "Well, I don't believe in God." And I tried to graciously say to him, "You know, okay, but that really has no bearing on whether or not he really exists, you know, because
Yeah,
after all, yeah, belief systems can be wrong, to
yeah,
say it succinctly." And the gal was very intrigued and wanted to know more. And so we had a little bit of a discussion, of which honestly I don't remember where it went. But there was a situation in trying not to, and just trying to be gracious about the thing, and how it went. Another case was some years later in Tahunga, California. Uh, I and some kids in our youth group. I was a youth pastor there at the time when I was teaching school at Village Christian School. We were at a park trying to share Christ in the community. And at this park were a bunch of biker types. I mean, the black leathers and the chains and the metal, and the big Harley like types. And so uh, we went up and I asked him, "If you guys, can I share with you about the Lord, about Jesus Christ?" And well, and the guy I talked to said to me, "Well, can I share with you some of my beer?" And I said, "Well, I no, thank you, sir. And, well, I don't want your stuff then, kind of a thing." But then the Bible proverb is soft answer turns away wrath. And uh, and so I gave him a soft answer. I couldn't even tell you what it was now. But we ended up having this great conversation, three or four of these guys and myself. And I learned a couple of things more that day. Not only the soft answer turns away anger, but you never can tell people by what they look like on the outside. You know, I mean,
Yes,
these guys were intimidating right off the bat. And
I believe it.
yeah, and Tahunga has kind of a bit of that, at least back then, probably in the 70s, back then, mid 70s. It had that kind of a flavor, you know, a little bit
Yeah,
of the earthy type, if I can
rustic.
put it that way. Yes. But it worked out. Again, I think everybody wants respect, kindness, graciousness, and boy, oh boy, Paul in Colossians 3, we're studying church Sunday morning, is definitely put on humility, clothe yourself with graciousness, wrap yourself in love, get rid of all lying, anger, malice. Oh my goodness, the Christian attributes are right there, and the kind of thing where people respond to.
And those are some
And
lessons some people really need to hear,
yes, for sure, for
honestly.
sure. Yeah.
For the sake of their well-being. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
living in anger is no way to live. It's
It,
a way to
oh,
suffer.
it's a truth. You said it well. You know.
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
It's proven itself.
Yes, that anger and energy. Anger, they say, is the most energizing emotion. Well, if you're angry all the time, that's a lot of energy that's is going to be destructive. Where is it
That's a
going?
very good way to put it.
High
Yeah,
pressure, blood pressure, stomach problems, that
eh,
sort of thing.
not a good place. It's not a
No,
good place. And
no.
um with this, I remember this was something I was gonna bring up as well as the when we were in Hawaii in seventh grade.
Oh
Um,
yes.
yeah, there was that time on the boat, and I was um, just standing in the front, and this evolutionist came up to me and started talking about mathematics and statistics about evolution. And I remember you came up and because I was like, can you help me with this? And
Yeah.
you came up and you gave the man a really loving response, and um, he went quiet because he didn't have anything to say that was nice. I mean,
Mm.
that was really what it was. Is
Hmm.
you he was kind of digging on me, and you came over and were just honest. Like, I will, I'll share facts, I'll share knowledge with you if you'd like to have a discussion. But that was an example of someone that didn't want to have that discussion. They closed their door before it even opened.
Mm.
They just wanted to project out that door, and then they shut their door because they're afraid that what they believe isn't right. I mean, at least that's what I think. When people
Yes.
shut down and walk away after
Hmm.
confronting you,
Hmm.
it's it's weird, right? It's
It is.
it's
It,
it shows how much people struggle inside.
yeah. Yes. And what you say is kind of what I was getting at when I was saying some of us, we want to dump our stuff on somebody else,
Yes,
but we're not really interested in a relationship, keeping it open, talking, gracious, all those kind of things.
it's
I'd
Pilgrim's
forgotten.
Progress,
It is. And
literally.
I'd forgotten that incident. I'm vaguely remembering it as you bring it up, but that's neat.
I've always remembered because and that's there's a lot of reasons I respect you, but
Oh,
that was a big moment in my life that taught me, like, it's okay to stand up for what you believe in.
hmm. Very good. Very good.
There's a lesson you
Yes.
can pull from everything, and that's part of the beauty, man. Is
Yes.
is the free storybook you get each
Yes,
day you wake up.
it's true. And very true. Standing up for what you believe in, and you don't have to be ugly about it. You know,
No, no.
you know, yeah.
That's something that ties in with politics.
Hmm.
We don't have to be ugly with each other if we're blue or red or whatever
Yes,
you want to call yourself.
yes,
It's ridiculous to waste time feeling angry because someone else's decision.
yes.
Eh,
That's been well said. Don't let them have that power over you.
yes, and exactly because there's things like Stalin and Hitler.
Mm.
Decisions were made that were questionable.
Yes,
So there's times you need to stand up for what's right, but you shouldn't also in moments of peril again let that affect your core.
yes, I agree.
With the active life of the outdoors coming up, people are looking to be out and about more. Sasquatch Farms CBD brings organically grown products in the Sierra Nevadas from the soil to the people. Farmer John has worked on green projects on the farm since 2013. He looks forward to providing you with the highest quality soaps, salves, CBD tinctures, pre-rolls, along with some other fresh products. It takes a community in farming to survive, so any efforts made to support our farmers in the world helps to support our society as a whole. So remember, if you can't catch them out on the farmers market, catch them online at sasquatchfarmscbd.com. That's sasquatchfarmscbd.com. Thank you. Now back to the show.
So we
Very
agree with
true.
each other.
Yes, very true.
So I think that's a good place to move forward.
Okay, very good. Very good.
I wanted to swing it back actually to your schooling.
Okay.
How did being a principal change the dynamic of your life? Is there any advice you have from your experience as a leader to other developing leaders out there?
Yes, I appreciate that question very much. It took me a while to realize in the ministry, pastoring, then as a at the Christian school for those 27 years, the way you lead can work against who you are and longevity in leadership. Because, and I would, if I was to tell myself a few things nowadays, I would say stress less. You don't have to be the answer to everybody's problem or situation. You don't have to give an immediate answer right back to everybody's thing. In leadership, sometimes, yes, you do. I mean, teachers, principals, you're making decisions all the day long. But on some things, and those primarily sometimes those might relate to discipline things as a principal, you know, uh, going slow and being careful, very important. Not taking yourself overly seriously, quit worrying about yourself, and seeking to be humble with everybody, gracious, again, gentle, appropriate, standing up for what's right, standing your ground in a gracious way when it's needed. But those are some of the things. And I think anybody in leadership, it's kind of like getting up public speaking. You're immediately confronted with a sense of the self. And if you let it, it can be very unproductive. And
That's very
others,
true.
yeah, and others around you can simply say, well, as they're talking by the water cooler, so and so, they're just out for themselves. So and so, they really, they're trying to make sure they don't get shot at. Well, as a leader, if you're going to do the right thing, there's bound to be times where people are going to take shots at you.
Mhm.
And hopefully, though, if you build a community of love and trust and humility and graciousness and respect, you'll find that will be the shots. You're going to leave people's guns unloaded because they'll be willing to talk. If you be, and that just makes me think of Jesus. For a guy who you think would be incredibly intimidating, yet as a leader, he apparently was not that way at all. You had the harlots and the prostitutes and the down and outers and the tax collectors and the friend of the friendless, has well been said. All these kind of people coming to him. Who had problems with Christ? Established traditional religion in the Pharisees, people, and I think the scripture would
Stuck
bear
in
this
their
out.
ways.
Yeah, and they are full of themselves, not willing to, they want to dump their stuff again, not willing to engage in anything of an open conversation, with some exceptions. Nicodemus being one that met Christ in John 3, a leader of the Jews, yet he wanted to talk to Christ. Who are you? And boy, how does this happen? And blah, blah, blah. But I
Yeah.
think, I definitely look to Christ every day to help you in leadership. I just think that's so very important. But I think some of the basic things. Now, if you're a general in an army, that'd be a different style of leadership. But most of us that are day to day working with other people, I think it's important that you build trust to get them on board with where you think you're supposed to go. And I think you
Yeah.
do that by treating them very, very well in
Yeah.
terms of the interpersonal stuff.
And I think the Bible does a really good job of painting a picture of diversity.
Yes.
There's a place for everyone in
Yes.
society.
Yes.
And that's the one thing I absolutely adore. It's because it really boils down to camaraderie. We know
Mm-hmm.
that we're on the same planet, and that war will only bring more war.
Yes.
So, and I mean that's one example in a bunch of messes, so to speak. But
Yeah.
the main thing that I gather from what you said too is, well, the one that sticks out to me in personal experiences is humility.
Yes.
Humility is a huge one that gets disregarded because it's a passive emotion, right? It's not, you don't actively humility. You
Mm-hmm.
take humility into consideration through your actions. And
Yes.
there's a difference in your perspective when you take that step back and apply humility, because you realize that your words could hurt people.
Yes. And I've learned that, boy, what I thought I just said, a lot of folks interpret it differently. Working on the communication as a leader is huge.
Yes.
Because and that takes interacting with other people. No, that's not what I meant. I meant this, and boy, that is gigantic. I do believe.
And it takes effort. Relationships take effort. It took effort for us to get here to
Yes.
record. I mean, we had to, and not talking about any of the glitches or the kinks, but it's just the fact that I had to reach out to you. You had to
Mm.
reach back out to me. You were
Hmm.
willing to make that connection, and I was willing to make that connection. And look, now we're growing something from that.
Yes, which is wonderful.
I absolutely agree.
Mm.
Absolutely agree. And
Hmm.
one thing I wanted to add to this, because it came up in conversation literally like 4 5 hours ago. I
Uh-huh.
was talking to a friend, and I was telling him that we were just discussing, and excuse me, I had mentioned something about leadership, and we started talking about, what trait do you feel like is your weakest? And I told him that I felt like my anger was one of my
Mm.
weakest. It's
Hmm.
a hard thing, and even when you feel like you have a good hold on it, then you're angry again. And it's a sudden emotion, and it's a bold emotion.
Yes.
But I we talked about Jesus, actually.
Very good.
We were I was like, that Jesus was upset. He was angry at the tax collectors. This is a
Hmm.
person that was sinless, and here
Hmm.
he is. He's upset.
Mm.
Anger is part of the emotional spectrum. It's okay to
Hmm.
be angry.
Hmm.
It's not good to dwell in anger. And
You're
that's where
right.
people get things messed up.
Yes.
They want to keep that energy. They want that exhaustion, right? They want
Uh-huh.
it in a sense. It's a weird way to say it. And I don't know if this is true, but it seems like it's a dopamine rush for some people.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where it gets dangerous, right? You don't want to form a habit in negativity
Hmm. Very true. Very true.
or around a negative atmosphere. I think that's a better way to put it, because
And
you're not going to
and
attract people that way.
you're not. You're just not. If you're unapproachable, you're kind of a thorn, bristles all the time or whatever, and it makes me think one big thing for me I've learned in leadership, stop worrying about yourself. And just, because I think sometimes that motivates too much how we appreciate other people. I don't want to give them anything to shoot at me, or
Yes,
whatever.
you don't want to give them ammunition. You don't want to give them the stones.
Yeah. And just be genuine and real and humble and try to actually do something about what they're coming to you to discuss or whatever. And as you put it earlier, even just listening is a big thing.
Absolutely. It's something I need to remind myself constantly. I mean, I
Hmm.
run a podcast now, so listening's kind of an important aspect.
It is. It really is. It is.
Yeah,
Very, very, very
it's
well put.
something. I appreciate that. It's something you have to practice, though.
Yes,
That's what I'm getting at, because it, if you don't use it, you lose it.
that's the truth. Very, very true. Man,
it's it's uh it's pretty funny how powerful simple lessons can be.
yes, I agree.
I adore language for that reason, because
Yes.
it's an art. It really is an art.
Mm, very true. Very true.
Well, if you had a chance to redo your college in
Yes.
this day and age,
Uh-huh.
what would you do differently than in your previous experience?
In one sense, as far as since I was oriented towards the ministry and that type of thing, in one sense, in the academic part of it, I wouldn't change anything. But in another sense, I think I would work on being friendlier, work on again relaxing in the college atmosphere and seeking out more opportunities for some of the on-campus things. I never lived on a campus, but you know, but the school I went to, they did have basketball and soccer, and not that I would play those things, but that I would certainly enjoy going to see them, and I guess be a part more of what's going on in the life of the school. I would do that probably.
Did you feel like you were too focused on academics when you went?
Yes, I do think I was. I don't think that was a bad thing, but at the same time, my last 2 years of college, I was working as a foster father, big brother in a mentally and emotionally handicapped children's home. I was in a live-in situation with these boys, and it's all boys. And I look upon that, and I know that was a great experience for me. But I know it also, I learned some things there. I felt it was God shredding my self sufficiency and teaching me that I needed to rely on Him more than I had ever realized in ministry. But it also, between that and school, kept me pretty busy too. And my father passed away right as I started my last 2 years of college, and I got drawn into this handicapped children's home. My mom was the house mother. I got drawn in more than I ever had thought I would be in that capacity, and and I don't regret any of that. I guess one thing I'm trying to say is whenever we approach, boy, the mental attitude we bring to it can make or break, make it harder on me than I don't need to be, or
True.
uh, or anyway, just the attitude we approach stuff.
That's
And
very true.
yeah, and I would just say getting more involved in the life of the school would have been a helpful thing.
But it sounds like that was a very situational moment for you.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And that is part of character development. Sometimes I know I've had to make some decisions and some moves because I feel pressed. It's not that I was forced. I had a knife to my neck telling me I needed to do this.
Yes.
It's more of like I have to apply myself. If I don't apply myself here, where am I going to apply myself?
Mm.
When am I going to apply myself? And
Hmm.
it's a matter of understanding mortality. We don't live forever. We
No.
have to make a decision on when we want to start before
Yes.
we ever think about ending.
Yes. Very true.
So it's
Mm.
it's it's never too late to realize that. It's but it is too late if you think about yourself all the time. You don't
Hmm.
take yourself out of your bubble. You don't push yourself out of your environment that you're comfortable in.
Mm.
So in a situational thing like that, you were put in that. You had to survive. You
Yes.
you could have made different choices. I'm sure you could have turned to drugs. You could have done different things. You could have been a different John.
Mm.
But you chose to apply grit and
Mm.
work past something that still it sounded like a challenge for you at the time. It
Oh,
must have been.
it sure was. It sure was. Yeah.
So I
Very.
appreciate you sharing that. I based off of that, I do have one more question. Do
Yes.
you feel like college is something everyone should experience a form of?
Going back, if you were to ask me this 10, 15 years ago, I'd say, yeah, I think so. In fact, even today, I like to encourage people, well, try a semester. I mean, I've always been one that I really love learning. But in a general answer to your question, I would say, I don't think so. College has gotten so expensive, at least some of the 4-year schools. Uh, and there's cheaper ways to go, that's for sure. And I think college is kind of essential if you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, a an engineer, uh, maybe in ministry kinds of things. But in so many other things, you don't need it. I guess. And the old thing is, you could go to a 4-year school, get a 4-year degree, and get a job in something totally different than what
Hmm.
your education was. But at least they say, at least I've heard it said, well, the college degree shows you have self discipline. Well, okay, but I don't know if I want to pay thousands of dollars
For
for that.
self-discipline.
I know.
That's the funniest thing about it, right? Because it comes down to the emotional spectrum. If you can handle your emotions, you can teach yourself, like you can apply yourself with the tools
Yes.
given to you for free to
Yes.
get essentially a college education, but you have to guide yourself into a
Yes.
direction of growth. If you're not
Yes.
in a like I think that's where my perspective in this is
Yes.
college is good for people if they're not good at self-discipline.
Yes.
Like it sounds super ironic because we're saying that you can instill self-discipline for free, but
Hmm.
some people need structure. Some people
Yes.
need guidance.
That's true. And I want to, oh, there was a thought here. You know, by going to college, at least trying a semester of this or that, or taking a class, I want to say a couple things. One is by taking some classes, you may discover areas of interest to you that you never knew you had. On the other side of the coin, I think it's important to realize that sometimes the way we do education, a la public school, high school, or required courses in junior college, it kills off a further interest in education. And that's tragic. That is just tragic. I have no kids even now in high school, and they don't want to be there, and they feel they can tell that even the teacher doesn't want to be there,
It's a
and they're not.
pressure test. Like,
Yeah,
and
they're-
I've talked to teachers about this in college, and they've said
hmm,
they hate that they have to do this kind of stuff.
yes, and that's tragic because education should not destroy or squash the very thing it's trying to encourage. And I think the way we go about it at times does that, and that's tragic. And that's why I'm all for a little freer viewpoint of how we educate. In fact,
I totally
sometimes
agree.
yeah, sometimes I think that's why I think homeschool or charter school that has combinations of how to do things can be just wonderful things. Not everybody can do those things, but it allows you a whole lot of freedom, especially homeschool, to get into things you may want to that you never will in a traditional form of education, but that you
Yes.
can because the sky's the limit. You want to be
Yeah.
interested in archery, guns, flying an airplane. You can just do all kinds of things in terms of that. Archaeology, even as a high schooler or whatever, fun
Absolutely.
fun stuff.
Yeah, and it's something that people don't realize.
No. And so if anybody's had a bad experience with education, don't let that color what it could be. And
Yes.
in fact, there's a fella whose name escapes me at the moment, but he taught in the largest public school district in the country, New York City, and he earned the state and local district awards for Teacher of the Year. He was told that he had a curriculum that was characterized as a guerrilla warfare curriculum. In other words, it wasn't traditional. And administrations would try to fire him and in his post, but he would earn all these awards. But he personally felt that the current system, at least his experience, was awful. He hated it. And he's written some books that if I was going to be a teacher, I would definitely encourage reading of these books because they are pretty. John Taylor Gatto, I think his name is, something like that. Gatto. Definitely. But I'm just reflecting. I bring him up because he felt the very thing we're saying, and that we need to think out of the box. If
I would agree.
if you had a bad experience in education, don't think that has to be every form of education because
No.
we are all natural learners at heart. Mhm.
I did not enjoy most of my experience at
Yeah,
college,
yeah.
but I enjoyed every moment of networking that I had at college.
Mm, very
It
good.
was worth every moment of struggle to
Yes,
get the good out of the experience.
very good.
So
Very good.
that would be something I would recommend is at least people consider the relationship aspect because you can grow your relationship with people and maybe get out of your high school box if you're getting out of high school. Um,
Yes.
because that's it. And this. I don't want to go down a tangent with education because I definitely can, but um, uh, this is what I've been saying too. Is there's a problem between high school and college. There's no
Mm,
intermediate neutral ground.
hmm
There's workforce or education, and
hmm
most people out of 12 years of education say, I think I want a break.
Yes, I agree. In fact, what you say brings up a good thought, and that is college ideally is an experience.
Yes.
And you are exposed to a lot of different things that properly you wouldn't be exposed just on your own. And sometimes some of these schools pull in big speakers, whether that's spiritual, whether it's political, whether it's international experience, whether it's things of your particular interest. And those things are all things of value because it pushes you beyond your borders and what you know. And so sometimes,
Absolutely.
yeah, sometimes if the classwork gets lost, well, hopefully you've had more than that in terms of the overall experience.
Yes. Yes, and that is how college was founded. I mean, there was obviously a level of high class, low class to it. Unfortunately, that was just the way society was. But
Yeah.
the the model still hasn't changed. It was based around an experience where you go and you're going into an academic space that's separate from that town, that's separate from that city. So it is literally, and this is part of what I argued with uh, some of the stuff I was doing with educational paperwork was
Yes.
um, they're their own culture. Each
Yes.
college is their own culture and their own community. And
Hmm.
when you leave your community, you have the chance to gather information from that culture and that community outside of yours and bring it into your local culture and community. And
Hmm.
therefore that culture grows, that community grows in an aspect. That's a sense of evolution in society.
Hmm.
We learn from systems, from patterns. So if we're not going out and seeing what there is to observe, you will never know what your potential could be.
Yes, I agree. It reminds me, 100 years ago, what was the idea about philosophy behind college? Well, liberal arts, making you a well-rounded person. Well, I don't think where that's it anymore. I think people want to go to a college to learn something useful that'll benefit them rather than just this general, I know a little bit of philosophy, psychology, literature, history, blah, blah. And yet so many
Yes.
college programs are still in this liberal arts idea. And it's just, I don't feel really valid anymore. You
I
you want
agree.
Yeah, you want a bang for the buck and something that's going to help you and not just, a well-rounded person kind of thing.
Well, and that's the thing is the general consensus around certain subjects can be gathered through a free tool, the internet.
Yes.
And that's the problem is no matter what, you can't charge people for information that they have access to for free.
No, I
It,
agree.
it's not, at least you can dupe them, you could trick them and pretend you have something that they don't. But generally speaking, I'd say what 70%, 80% of what's taught at a college campus has got to be somewhere else off of that campus that
I
you
would
have
agree.
potential access to for free.
Yes.
And this, so from a business perspective, the model that they have is bound to go bankrupt at some point.
I
Um,
agree.
it in my opinion, it should. If
Yeah,
they're
I
going to be
agree.
greedy about it, I can't stand by greed. I think it's a greedy model that they have, and it's putting the less fortunate people at a disadvantage.
I agree. I think you said it well. It almost reminds you of, back in the ancient world, the ancient Greeks, if you wanted to be educated, you would join yourself to a particular guy in a philosophical school that had, kind of like becoming his disciple. And really, in a sense, if there's a college or university today that has a particular individual, man or woman, that is extremely well versed, the archaeology, the paleontologist, the medical doctor, in what they are doing, it's almost like forget this other stuff in the college. You want to join yourself to that person to learn all you can if that's where you're going. And then life with life, and that's an old educational adage. Life responds first and foremost of all to life, and that's a neat, true, oh, truism. And anyway, I don't mean to get far afield there, but it just made
No,
me again
no.
think of the personal aspect again of education as we've come around the circle into coming almost full tilt with the way
Almost
that
full
we're,
circle.
yeah,
Mhm.
the way we're,
And I agree. Like
yeah.
with the mentors and the people that you study under,
Hmm.
it must have worked because they had apprenticeships and mentorships for millennia. I
Yeah,
mean, really, like
yeah,
this has been thousands of years of passing on information,
yes.
handcrafted information. And
And
it
and and forget all this other stuff. I'm saying, go ahead.
it's just it's essentially like it's almost a lost craft, right?
Yeah,
The passing of information itself is becoming a lost craft.
very true.
And fake news has a lot to do with that.
Yes, I think that's very true.
But when you're talking to a real person about a real job or a
Hmm.
real experience, it's hard to fake that because you
Yes.
could sense that emotion off of that person.
Hmm. That's very true. How they present themselves, how articulate or lack of it, or awkward, or whatever. I mean, there's so many variables depending on what you're trying to go for, but
No
that's
kidding.
very true. Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
did did you want to add anything? I didn't mean to cut you off again.
No, no, you're fine.
How would you describe living through the Cold War and Vietnam War era?
You know, again, there was a lot of fear, but not the same as today in what was promoted, in my opinion, in COVID-19 or the Green New Deal. Uh, for example, I was reading that there's been over 70 predictions of ecological collapse and disaster over the last 50, 60 years, none of which have come true. But going back to the Cold War, Vietnam War, the one thing about the Vietnam War, in the Cold War, well, I guess I'll start Cold War first. Sometime the LA Times supplement to the Los Angeles Times would tell you how to make a nuclear bomb shelter in your backyard and give you instructions as to how to do that. And I know
Wow.
there were some people that would do that. We never did, of course. Uh, but again, this thing. I remember 62 when we heard in my math class in junior high over the Cuban Missile Crisis, we just sunk a Russian ship. And that heightened fears of war and those things. But even back then, the total destruction aspect of things wasn't like it is now in our current thinking. And you live with these things and you realize, boy, I don't think, and I do believe this from the Bible standpoint, I don't think God's going to let this world blow itself up. There's going to be a lot
Yeah.
of problems for sure, but I don't think God made the planet to come to some sort of poof that's going to be out there in the universe. The Viet,
I really deep down hope that's the case because
yes,
I I like to think that that is true. I really do.
they do. And if the Bible's true, and of course I believe it is, it's not there. It's not going that
Yeah.
direction. Now, on the Vietnam War, the thing that was so disconcerting there, because a lot of times the thing that was disconcerting was the media constantly pounding against the efforts of our own troops fighting in Vietnam. And I fault a couple things. The politicians getting us in a war they never intended to win. And in my opinion, you can't ask young men to go in a war without victory possible.
It's terrible. I mean,
It
it's
is.
absolutely terrible. And I've seen so many Vietnam vets, and I make sure to shake their hands, man, because
Mm,
it is that's a terrible memory of America,
yes. The
honestly.
unpatriotic. Yeah, and it was like the first war. Of course, I was young. The baby boom after World War II generation, all of that. But the first war in which the media deliberately tried to create this drubbing, and they were successful in many ways, drubbing against patriotism because part of the thinking was we're fighting communism. This was good. We're fighting communism in Vietnam to avoid eventually fighting it here in America. And yet, as you know, looking at the current, in my opinion, looking at the current situation, there's a lot of forces in our own culture in America trying to uh, create communism in this own nation,
Yes.
which is very unfortunate. And they're
Yes.
doing it by tearing down patriotism, tearing down traditional values, and a lot of different things. And that's a whole other discussion. And I'm not trying to launch a bunny
No.
trail, you know,
That's another
but
time.
yeah, that's another time. But I think it was so unfortunate that, especially when you join the military, that you're questioning. And now I'm of a mind that I think it's good to be questioning some of these things because I don't trust what's coming down the pike from government about, in my own opinion, about everything.
I agree.
I think there is, as you aptly pointed out, there's a lot of greed by servants in
Yes.
government, and there's lying and manipulating by servants in government. I think this whole COVID thing demonstrated that big time. Anyway, I won't even get to that. I'm not trying to create problems in any
Oh
of this.
no, but it's very true. How it compounded over the years.
Yes.
That's something I wanted to ask you about because I had a feeling like that is generally why there's such a disconnect between the generations. Is
Yes.
because now it's extreme, right? Now
Mm-hmm.
everything's extreme. It's a big
Mm-hmm.
deal. Social media makes things blow up, so it's in everyone's face at once, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is happening! Did you see this is happening? Oh
Yes.
yeah, I saw this is happening." It instills not only like a dopamine rush again, like, "Oh
Mm-hmm.
whoa, I just found this
Mm-hmm.
out. I learned something." You're
Yes.
you're creating like this sense of I'm a messenger. I need to take this information and share it. And
Yes.
it's this hoarding of information that's making people collectively stressed.
Yes. And that's another thing, as you well pointed out, we have access to more information nowadays than we ever have needed. And it does have its stress level for
Yes.
sure. And you know what? Recently, I had an own light bulb moment in my heart in just that I hadn't felt the same way, and that was I began to realize over the last year how people could, in fact, actually come to blows in the American Civil War. It got to a
Yeah.
point of impasse. And I began to realize that, man, I think our culture does seem to be, unfortunately, heading in that same direction without a supernatural work of God and heading
Yeah.
it off at the pass, kind of a thing.
Unfortunately, I have to agree. I the From the research I've done and from various books that have been written,
Yes.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Um there's every sign that we could have a civil war. Um
Hmm.
and it's because we don't trust each other.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
comes down to distrust in government and distrust in neighbors and distrust in society.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's not good.
No, it isn't.
But
It really isn't.
it can be fixed.
Yes. Yes. I agree with that very much.
Positivity is a powerful force.
It is. It really is. Very much so.
Well, John, if
Yes.
you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you choose to go these days and why?
Okay. You know, Switzerland's always been a fun thing for me. I just like those mountains. I wouldn't
Oh,
mind,
that's so cool.
yeah, the lakes, the mountains, the hills are alive, the musical, all that sort of thing. Uh, I wouldn't mind at all. I think it'd be fun to go through England, uh, Ireland, take a tour of castles.
Absolutely.
Uh, China was really neat. When I went there, that awakened a part of me. The Great Wall we were able to see, jade factories. could not believe some of the carvings out of one piece of jade, like the size of a desktop, sailing ship, out of a piece of jade. That was just like incredible. And porcelain and the history and the Forbidden City. And oh my goodness, there was just so many wonderful things there. Israel always is intriguing from the biblical Christian background. And that's neat. Egypt, I'd love to see the pyramids. Uh, and have some of that experience. The Valley of the Kings, there's so much there that reflects into biblical things. Um,
Well, it sounds like someone needs to get you a GoFundMe to take
oh,
a little take a little uh boomerang trail.
I haven't thought of that, but that's an intriguing idea.
Hey, I think it's never too late for travel. I think travel is a
No,
good thing for everyone to
no.
do.
I did hear a missionary once years ago who had been to Africa all around the globe, and I agree with him in what he said, and that is, he said, out of all the places he's been and where he could go, we have incredibly beautiful spots right here in the United States.
We
Whether
do.
whether it's the Tetons in Wyoming, the Rockies, the Sierras, the swamps of Florida with alligators and whatever else. Oh, there's the deserts of Death Valley, if you like. Boy, I like that area too.
Oh, me too.
There's just a lot of neat opportunity right here on our doorstep.
Absolutely. People underestimate our land. There's a lot of
Yes,
land.
yes,
There's a
there,
lot of land. I can tell
there,
you from driving across the United States now.
there really is. Very good.
It's a blessing. And one thing this reminded me because of the world travel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when we were talking a while back about what motivates people to push forward, something Anthony Bourdain said, and this is the guy who did um, Anthony Bourdain's No Reservations, the food show.
Okay.
He would travel and go to different cultures and go to areas he wasn't used to and would just try the cuisine, talk to the locals. And the last interview that he did before he supposedly hung himself
Oh,
was he said that I think most people are just trying to put a clean shirt on and have some hope.
interesting.
It's
Yeah.
stuck with me. I do feel like that's the case. Most times we don't understand how similar we are, even though we're
Yes.
across the world from each other.
Yes. That's I've not heard that before. I think that's a very reflective and kind of a deep statement that does speak to our commonness as people
I will
with each
send you the
other.
link
Okay.
to that interview because I think you would really like it. It's one of the best interviews I've ever heard.
Very cool.
Quite frankly, and from someone who's on television for over 10 years, it's a very
Mm.
interesting
Uh-huh.
discussion.
Hmm. Very good.
But I just wanted to put that out there, especially for the viewers, because that's a really cool thing, and I think Anthony Bourdain deserves to be recognized for it.
Yes.
Um. Anyways,
Hmm.
what is your experience with death? You had
You
a near
know,
death experience, and I would love if you would be willing to share how you worked through this miraculous moment.
well, thank you. Yes. I've had two heart attacks. The first one, they had to care flight me to St. Mary's in Reno. The second one, I had I had what eventually was diagnosed as a heart attack for 3 days. The third
Three
day,
days.
and this was my dumbness as, man, we never go to the doctor kind of thing. I finally said to my family, I was here at home, oh, you need to take me in. This thing's not going away. My daughter, Teddy Joe, you know her, the third, drove, and when she got the other side of Portola, California, drove at over 100 miles an hour to get me to an ambulance waiting for me at the Nevada border that took me to St. Mary's. And on the table in the emergency room of St. Mary's. I actually, I didn't realize what was going on at the time, but I was uh, out for 90 seconds, they told me later. And apparently they did CPR, all of that. Well, all I remember is I'm on this table, and then all of a sudden, I am above my body by about 3 feet, looking back at my body on this table from over my right shoulder. There was kind of this yellowish, maybe even goldish color all around. There was a big row of medical personnel in like a U shaped around the table that my body was on. Someone took out a blanket, opened it up, and laid it on me. And then the next thing I knew, there was this blonde-headed EMT person, long blonde, who said, "Well," he looked at me, he said, "Well, we lost you there." And for about 90 seconds. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. When I was looking back at myself from above, I didn't realize what was going on. It took me a while to figure this out, you know. And then when she said, we lost you for a little bit and blah, 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 it was like, oh my goodness. I guess they had done CPR. I don't know if they did that fibrillator thing, you know, shock you back, those kind of things.
Mhm.
The end of the story, I came away with thinking that God wasn't going to take me 1 second sooner than what he wanted. You know, I joke with people, and that when God looked over the parapet of heaven and he said, "Oh, it's John, is it? Well, send him back," you know. You know,
Send him to walk the plank.
yeah, you know, kind of a thing. But I came away that God isn't going to take me one sooner than he wants me. And I believe that's true for people that are trusting in God about this sort of thing. I
Absolutely.
mean, if you want to go out and drive a car over a cliff, okay, he'll let you be responsible for your own choices. But if you are going to ask him to help you in whatever it is in life, I really think he'll do that. And anyway, there was something. And I between the 2 heart attacks, I've had 8 stents, and I'm on pills now, and I've been doing really well. The last heart attack was in August, at least 4 years ago, I think it
Yeah,
was.
it was a good while ago.
Yeah, and
You've been really healthy, honestly.
I have. You know, they told me at that time I lost the second heart attack, most of the functioning percentage of my heart, and then through their cardiac therapy with St. Mary's for about 6 months, they told me I gained a lot of it back.
That's awesome.
It's been wonderful. Now, I must say, if you gave me a shovel and told me to dig a ditch, I would not be very good for you.
You
You
might
know,
refuse that one. Noted.
I'd tire out pretty quickly. But other than that, you know, I'm thankful. You know, God, the Bible says in the book of Daniel that God gives us the very breath we take, and I'm thankful for His. And He made life. 1 Timothy 6. God made life to be enjoyed. And when we don't enjoy it, and that doesn't mean there's no trials or troubles, but there's a way in which to face those and look at those. And but I do believe that God's very high on life and how He made this planet and how He made each of us. Yeah, sin has marred that, and of course, I know you know that's a whole nother topic. But
Yes.
anyway, that's kind of my experience with going through that and what it's made me appreciate and need to remind myself, because it's so easy to get involved into the negative and the poor me's, and things are going this way, that way, the next way, rather than looking at it. All of life is an opportunity for growth, for blessing. Problems, as they say, become opportunities. And these aren't just slogans. I think that they are real things. And I can change,
Absolutely.
yeah, I can change my life by changing how I think. It's as simple as that. And I
Yes.
think that's a very important thing.
And I just have to say I am absolutely thankful and grateful to have this conversation right now with you. I mean, there
Oh,
was
thank
always
you.
that chance, you know,
Hmm.
it couldn't have happened. And I like to think that I'm blessed in having a chance to have this podcast with you.
Oh,
And
thank you. And I
you
feel
know,
blessed, sincerely, Cameron. I feel blessed talking to you too. Go right ahead.
thank you, my friend. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart,
Oh,
it's
thank you.
truly a pleasure, and I think that it's wonderful that you have confidence to tell this, because it has to be a hard moment for your family too. And
Mm.
I know that you're you're popular.
Oh,
People love you. You know,
well,
you
thank
you
you.
don't you, you didn't ask for the trouble. The trouble
No,
came, but
yes.
but you took it and you learned from it and you became stronger in your faith because of it. And
Mm.
that's awesome. I think that's totally commendable, and respectable.
Well, thank
It's
you.
like you said, you could have sat in bed and loped and groaned, but you you built and you pushed and you had faith that it would get better, and it did. And I, you 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 taught people through your actions in that situation. I mean, I would think you taught me. You taught me
Mm.
to appreciate life and appreciate kindness.
Mm. A funny story about that second heart attack. My kids said, "Dad, we need to develop a T-shirt that says, 'My dad survived a 3-day heart attack. What is your superpower?'" No. And I think Teddy came
Oh,
up with that one.
oh, that's golden. I think that the shirts have to be made someday. Just, surprise birthday present. I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
But
that is funny. Mhm.
with that, John, I want to see if there's any books or media that you'd recommend to the audience.
Boy, uh, there is so much out there, I think, that is good. Books as far as life is concerned and living it kind of a thing? Or,
Your
or
preference.
are you
What you
o
think generally,
okay,
like your what you gained the most appreciation for over the
o
years.
okay. You know, uh, as far as academic studying, say, for example, in my background, the Bible, Israel, what does this text mean? What does that mean? As you pointed out earlier, there are tons of resources on the internet that are really good for that. But as far as the people touch aspect, uh, you know, uh, there are a lot of good books out there, and that's almost where I would focus nowadays more. Uh, the aspect of connecting with people as so important, and some books that encourage you and help you. One book that really helped me that I don't think it's in print anymore, and the title of it was "Missing in Action," and it dealt with the absentee father, and it's a book for men, and but not that women could get some value out of it for sure, but it talked about dads that are there at home, but are really just there. They're not much of a presence for anything at home. Or dads that were not at home and that are gone entirely. And the difficulties and the problems that makes for young boys, young girls growing up. And man, that really spoke to my heart. Kind of started off based on Malachi 4, where in the Bible, where God says before the great and terrible day of the Lord, a time of specific judgment where God begins to play hardball with the planet. Before that day happens, I will send Elijah the prophet, and he will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the children to the fathers. And you have to stop and think, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse, the scripture says. Absentee fathers in our culture, any culture, oh boy, does create extreme problems. Like, who are most of the people in prison? Young men, majority grew up without dads. That
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and you have to stop and think, well, what must the world be like if God has to send somebody whose miracle ministry is turning hearts of dads to their own kids? That must mean that the family is taking a huge beating in these end days. That it just fraught with so much meaning in terms of that being God's thrust over so many other things. Nothing is said to women, to moms, because we know their hearts are there with their kids 9
Yeah.
out of 10 times.
But it's a different dynamic for men with their kids, because you're not carrying them.
No, it's true. And as they say, and I think there's an element of truth, that women are more relational oriented, men are more task oriented. So what are these men are so self-absorbed is, I guess, the bottom line of what some of these books are
Naturally
saying.
inclined to be, yes.
Yes, and that is a tragedy and causes some problems. But that was a great wakening, my book that wakened me up to, my goodness, what am I doing? What am I thinking? How much time am I really getting? Quit retreating to always have my alone time, my this time, my that,
Yeah.
or whatever. And there's a point in time in which we all need to have our sanity moments. But
Absolutely.
at the same time, boy, that just caused me to think.
I really
Another,
want to find that book, honestly.
okay, yeah,
I
I'm,
think that would be a great read.
I,
think that
it,
topic is important.
oh man, I really do think so. And other types of books that I think would be great. And we've got a ton at our house here. Any type of Christian biography things. For example, Corrie ten Boom, if you remember who she was,
Yes.
that during World War II hid Jews in her house and was sent to Ravensbrück. Her and her sister Bessie died there. Corrie was released. Bessie, a month before Corrie's release and her death, said that the Lord told her they were both going to be free by Christmas. Hers was freedom in going to be home with the Lord. Corrie's was released back to this earth. But I think a lot of these stories, there's a ton out there, whether it's William Wilberforce, who labored for years to get slavery out of the British Empire. He was a Christian man doing it from that perspective. Or whether it's about John Perkins, a modern day legend, a black man who has written books, who's the closest thing, I think, to a kind of a biblical prophet, one of them, who has written incredible books about black-white situation. One of them that's really good, it's called He's My Brother, where he tells his story of coming to Christ, and a white KKK tells his story about being in that movement, came to Christ. Both of them joined forces and and that's the title. He's my brother. No hatred of racial prejudice anymore. And that's part of the gospel. That's one of the end results, Paul says, of the gospel. No racial prejudices, no economic prejudices, no ethnic prejudices. The church has failed on that in so many ways in different parts. Another great story is, Yoshito, I think his name is, with a guy named Jimmy. Anyway, he was the guy, and I'm not getting his name quite right, escapes me. But again, these biographies. You see how God works in another person's life. Yoshito, and that's not his real name, but he you could Google this. He led the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. And,
Oh,
you know,
yes. I
yeah,
know who you're talking about, but I don't
okay.
remember his name either.
Jacob
It's close to
DeShazer.
that.
Yeah. Jacob DeShazer was the American who joined the forces right after Pearl Harbor and was sent under Jimmy Doolittle and did the raid on Tokyo 6 months after, I think after Pearl Harbor, and he gets crashed and he spends the rest of the war in a prison. Anyway, he becomes a Christian, goes back to Japan. Yoshito, however his name, I just kind of forget. He becomes a Christian. They join forces, and they
It might
start.
be Yamamoto, but I can't
Yeah,
remember actually.
yeah,
There's so many Japanese names in World War II that flew
yes,
planes, so
yes. But the point I'm trying to make is, boy, these things are greatly encouraging and inspirational, and they're wonderful for that reason. Uh, who they're about, what they're about, and the various ways God brings, as you've been alluding to and saying this morning, God brings people together. And
absolutely.
they bury all the old stuff that led them in different directions. Um, you
Yes.
know, so I'd say, some great biographies. And if you're struggling with some area of life, I'd go to James Dobson, Focus on the Family. If it deals with some family issues, there are so many good resources out there. I just go ahead and explore off the internet, type in some area you're interested in, and see what pops up. And then see if you know people that will recommend this or that who have read them that might, intersect with what you're going through or where you are, or that kind of thing.
Those are wonderful suggestions, John.
Oh,
I
well,
think
thank you.
that will help the audience if they have any questions in those fields. I wanted to ask you. I know that you're an author of a book yourself, at least one. I know you like to write, so I didn't
Hmm.
know if you'd like to mention any of your books, but
Well, thank you. I I have one book of 400 pages or so, and it's on a subject I never would have chosen as a first book to write. I have a second little booklet based on this first one that I was asked to write. This first one, there's a long story to it, but I'll simply mention the title. It's called Help, I Don't Understand What Is Happening to My Church. The subtitle, A Layman's Field Guide to Calvinist Controversy. Now, those
interesting.
In the Christian world that have the Calvinist view that God chooses people, predestination, and then he passes it over others and doesn't choose them to be saved. This is a totally unbiblical idea that
Yes.
has been brought in through people that emphasize certain English sounding verses, and they're off base in many, many, many ways. I,
I agree.
bless you.
I from my experience of Calvinist study, like yes, um,
Yeah,
according to the Bible, it's not biblical.
I agree.
And
First,
that's no disrespect to people, but from my
yes,
personal belief, I do agree with you. Yes.
very good. And yeah, and I don't want to sound disrespectful either. First Timothy 2, God's long suffering, not willing any should perish, but all come to the knowledge of repentance through Christ. And 4:10 that Jesus died for everyone. Uh, and then the second
Yes.
little booklet, I think it's called Examining Calvinism. It was just I was asked by what they termed themselves as the flagship charismatic church in South Lake Tahoe to write a booklet that cut to the chase of the matter from this big book about Calvinism. So I wrote a little pamphlet. Well, it's a little booklet, really. Excuse me. And we have that to give out for free. In our church, they had a bunch of copies in their church. Anybody interested in that, you could email me, Sturley, Sturley, all lowercase, at iCloud.com. And I'm not trying to sell anybody anything, but it is a topic that piques people's interest, and I never would have thought of Calvinism as a first book experience, but I am glad I went through it.
Absolutely. You learned, I'm sure, a great amount about the different denominations.
Yes, yes, that's very true. And
There,
what was happening within our own church at the time, going through this very thing.
there's so many layers. I mean, it's a society inside of a society. It's literally communities of people that, if there's no outside influence, it's a group. The
Yes,
group thinking is a thing.
it's
And
true.
that's not a negative outright, but for
Hmm.
some people, when you start following instead of engaging, that's where you
Hmm.
find trouble.
Yes. And I also should say, I guess on a lighter note, I don't have these things published. I'm hoping to someday, or that my kids will after I'm gone. I've got some Christian Dr. Seuss type children's rhymes that illustrate, the virtues of work, or, for example, if I could design my own room or basketball or just fun stuff. And I hope someday to maybe get some of these publicized with, big pictures and make a children's book that people would buy and read over and over. We have some small kids in our house, grandkids, and they just constantly love the same book over and over and over again, you know, or
You
the
gotta
same
love
show.
kids.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you this. I want to get back to you on that book because if I can help connect you with someone who could make that happen, I would love to read it myself.
Oh, very fine.
I
Thank you.
think
I'd appreciate that'd be wonderful.
I think we can make it happen. I mean, why not? Why not?
Mm,
We just
very
got to
good.
put some action forward, and yeah, just no telling. I think that's a good thing to push.
Very good. Thank you
Thank you,
very
by the
much.
way.
No, thank you.
Oh, you're too kind. You're too kind,
Oh,
John.
oh.
I
Well, thank you.
I would like to finally finish this out here with one last question.
Sure.
Would you like to close with any statements to our audience?
Boy, thank you, Cameron. Uh, it took me a long time to get to this point. Life definitely is worth living, no matter how difficult or dismal your circumstances could be. There are certain things that'll definitely improve it. Number one, I would encourage you start going to church, start getting around other people, start reading the book that has changed lives and is still changing lives for thousands of years, that Bible. But I'd also tell you, look at how you're thinking about yourself, your life, your situation, your problems, your family, your spouse. Look at the self talk. Is it positive? Is it going well? God didn't make, as well been said, God doesn't make any junk. You're not junk. You're not throwaway. You're not somebody that's worth nothing. Somebody needs to be trampled on. But as my brother here, Cameron, really pointed out, he made all of us in his image, and how much we need to respect each other, have humility with each other, appreciate each other. Dump what's putting poison in your life or your thinking. Come out into the light. And I would say, come out into the light of Jesus Christ, of the Bible of God. For he made this planet, everything in it and beyond, and he made life. It took me into my 20s to realize this because I was too worried about everything else. He made life to be enjoyed. So stop worrying, be responsible, and enjoy your life and look for the avenues of his help in helping you to live it in the right way. I guess that would be it, Cameron.
That's I'm speechless. I think that was a very genuine thing, and I I really appreciate you being here today.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you inviting me and asking me. It's been a wonderful delight,
Oh,
sincerely.
it was worth the wait, my friend.
Oh,
It
very
was
good.
worth all the hoops, and I hope you know that it was no trouble to me. I have enjoyed every moment of connecting with you, and I appreciate you having the patience to work with me on getting Discord set up.
Oh, ditto, my friend, ditto. Me and technology doesn't always get easily together from but
Oh, it's okay.
you've improved my learning skills, I want you to know.
I'm glad to hear it. And as you were having software issues, I was having hardware issues. I
Oh
had to
boy, oh boy.
work on my computer all week too. So we
Okay.
we're in the same boat, just a little different.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
There's always something to learn out there. So,
Yes, that
but
is true.
with that said, this has been a wonderful day, and I hope it continues to be a wonderful day for you, John.
Oh, thank you. I do believe it will be, and ditto, my friend.
Thank you, my friend.
Mm.
We will we will be back with the next podcast shortly today. So
Okay,
keep tuned, and I appreciate all the viewers for being here, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day as well.
very good.
I really enjoyed recording this with him, and as you could see, we've known each other for a chunk of time, and it really feels natural when you have conversated with someone for so long to open up and really get to the deep stuff. I really do hope this brought something meaningful to each of our viewers because it really touched me. I do look forward to the podcast with Matt next week. I think you guys are in for a treat. It should be a good one. So look forward to that, and I will keep you guys posted. Have a wonderful week, and until next time, take care.